Hey, our viewers, it is another amazing Friday, and we are here. We are doing it again. You know how we do it. This is Couples Will Show, and this is where we write down our love will while we are alive. As we have always said, we don't want our love story to be told when we are gone. We don't want our love story to be read when we are 6 feet under. And that's why every Friday we gather together, we come to share the issues that affect marriages, and we try to come up with solutions so that we can work on our marriages, so that we can enjoy our marriages. And here on Couples Will Show, we strongly believe that marriages work, and this can only be found on Wema TV, the voice of hope. And this Friday, we are having a hot topic. Maybe you have seen some changes in your spouse and you're wondering, what's happening? What's up? What's wrong with my husband? What's wrong with my wife? Could it be she's depressed? Could it be that he is going under depression? And so tonight we are handling how to handle a depressed spouse in marriage. Who can do that? I have a counselor. She is a counselor and her name is Frida. I'll give her a chance to introduce herself to us. Karibu sana Frida.
Thank you so much.
You can introduce yourself to our viewers.
Thank you so much, Willie. My name is Frida Kegocha. I'm a counselor and a marriage therapist, and I'm happy to be sharing on this topic on how handling a depressed spouse. I'm married to one husband, Patrick Kegocha Magaiwa, and together we have 2 children.
Wow.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for honoring our invitation.
Thank you.
We are
Welcome.
humbled that you came to be with us.
Yes.
I know we are going to learn a lot this
Sure.
beautiful night.
Sure. Yes.
So to kick us off, what is depression?
Well, depression is a mental disorder that affects mood. It makes someone to feel sad most of the time, to lack interest in valued activities, and to just lack motivation. Yes, in like day-to-day activities that they valued. And for it to qualify to be depression, it has to have gone, someone has to have experienced it for around 2 weeks. Yes.
So if for 2 weeks I go without feeling motivated, I should know that I'm depressed.
Hey, yeah, you need to consult. Yeah. Yes, with your doctor or with a counselor. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So what causes depression?
There are many causes of depression. Like, for example, if we are talking about couples, there are many things that happen in marriage that probably are not good, and they affect someone's mood. And some of them can be conflicts.
Yes.
High levels of conflicts in marriage. Like maybe there are some financial disagreements, and people disagree, a couple disagree on that, and so that brings conflict. Sometimes we get some things like uncovered, or one spouse discovering that their spouse or their loved one is going through an affair or is having an affair. That really causes depression in marriage. We have poor communication styles in marriage. We have various losses. You can have a loss of job, you can have a loss of a loved one in the family, those are some of the things that caused this depression. But generally, even to any other person, there are issues like chemical imbalance in the brain. We have a serotonin neurotransmitter, we have dopamine, and all those really contribute to our mood. And so if there is an imbalance, then they cause someone to go low in their mood. Yes.
Is it possible for one to be with a depressed spouse and one is not aware?
Yeah, very possible. It's very possible because most of the people are not aware, or they are not aware of depression. They cannot be able to place or label and say this is depression. Someone may feel like, my spouse maybe doesn't want to work. They have become maybe lazy. They just want to sleep. You know, maybe they are taking advantage. One spouse feels like the depressed spouse maybe it's taking advantage of them simply because they are not aware that there's something called depression. Yes.
Are there some signals that I should be aware of if I see my spouse behaving in a certain way?
Yes.
I should think of taking him or her to see a doctor because this might be depression.
Yes. Obviously, there are signs of depression, and most of the time you'll see your loved one has lost interest in valued activities, especially if they used to like maybe going to church or going to maybe watching a movie or playing around with the children. You realize maybe they are not doing that anymore. There are maybe some issues like loss of appetite. Your spouse may not be feeding the way they're supposed to be feeding. Maybe they are underfeeding or overfeeding. Issues of sleep. You may realize your spouse is either sleeping too much or sleeping too little. You may see maybe a lot of changes in their mood. That is, maybe they are getting easily agitated, irritable, frustrated, feeling hopeless, and a lot of anger, especially in men. Yes, and maybe some sense of violence. Yes.
Okay. So in the what should I do when I realize my spouse is going through a depression? What is the first step should I take?
The first step to take is, first of all, to just help them, be there for them, be supportive. You need to get to know what is it that exactly is happening to my spouse. You get to know maybe after consulting your doctor or a therapist, because they will tell you, if you tell them how your spouse is behaving, they will be able to tell you this is depression. So the number one, what we call psychosocial support, being there for your spouse, showing them love and support, it's very, very important. Yes, that's the number one.
What about maybe I've realized there's some changes with my spouse, and then now I'm trying to speak to her, trying to speak to him. We go to the hospital, but he is in denial.
Yes, a lot of people are actually in denial, and especially men. Yes, they don't want to accept that they are depressed, or maybe even they don't know themselves whether they are depressed. They just feel low, so they are not able to label it as depression. So it is good to be there for your spouse. Sometimes just probably leaving some literature for them or giving some literature to read so that they can get to know when they read the signs of depression and maybe the effects that can really help them to probably rise up and say maybe they need some help. The other things we can do, especially when a spouse is in denial, is to suggest that they go for a checkup to just a general physician, not a counselor or a therapist, because some people have some phobia or fear or stigma. If I'm going to a counselor, maybe I'm weak, or maybe because people really fear issues of mental health. So it is just good to suggest to them to go to a therapist, not a therapist, a general practitioner. They are diagnosed, and then the general practitioner can be able to, or physician can be able to send them, recommend them to a therapist, and then at least with that, we hope they can be able to take it serious. Yes, and then the other thing is just trying to accompany them. Try to help them look for one, a counselor or a therapist, and then you accompany them to that for the sessions. Yes, that will be very encouraging. Yes, and the other things that you can do also, like getting to know that depression is a mental, it's something that affects motivation and energy. So your spouse will not be able to just get out, get up and break out of it or snap out of it, out of their sheer will. It takes time. It takes a lot of effort, a lot of encouragement. So it is good for you as a spouse to just understand that and be patient with your spouse.
Yeah.
And it also brings a lot of negative thinking. For some the depressed spouse or person feels like, maybe there's no hope, maybe there's no cure, I'm done. And that's why you see many of them getting into suicide. It leads to suicide, by the way. Depression is that serious condition that you don't want to ignore. So it is good to just help your spouse or be there for them. They get encouraged to get out of it. And it's also good to know that you can get overwhelmed as the person offering support. It drains because those people are not motivated, or your spouse may not feel motivated. So because it drains, you also need to get support. Either look for a friend you can talk to, and at the same time also look for a therapist that you can be talking to, and they can be able also to work with you on how you can be able to support your spouse, and also how you can be able to support yourself. Because issues of diet is very, very key for yourself and also for your spouse. Yes. Also help them to get out with you, encourage them to go do those activities that they may enjoy. That really helps in lifting the mood. So don't allow your spouse to just be at home or in the house or in the bed sleeping. It's not healthy. Have them maybe take a cup of tea, maybe their breakfast, bask, out there under the sun, because there's some good effects that comes with from the sun. The sun helps in lifting our mood. In the sense that it works on our, more production of dopamine and serotonin, transmitters that I mentioned earlier. And so usually it works wonders to help someone's mood to be lifted.
What is dopamine?
Dopamine. They are neurotransmitters that help, or some chemicals in our brain that helps in, lifting our mood. Yes.
Now, there's this notion, you'll find maybe someone have realized the spouse has changed. There's some changes here and there. But you find this person would say, huyu ni kujifanya anajifanya. How do you deal with such a person?
Wow, that's a very common phrase. Anajifanya, napenda tu kulala. They are taking advantage of me.
Yes.
They don't want to work. And the spouse who is okay will feel frustrated or feel anger towards their spouse, and it's very dangerous. Because here now we are talking about the effects of depression. Because if it goes unchecked, the effect can really be detrimental. So it is good for a spouse to know there's a mental disorder called depression, and it is good to know the signs and the effects. And so the effect here is that your spouse, we said, it will affect your relationship. That connection. There is an aspect of withdrawal. Your spouse will feel withdrawn. That's one of the signs. And so it will affect your emotional connection as a couple. And even issues like your sexuality as a couple will be affected, because where there's no intimacy or closeness, or those feelings of closeness or connection, then that will really take away a lot from your marriage or relationship. And the other issues is that your spouse may feel, it might lead to divorce at some point if it's not sorted. Because if there are no feelings, no connection, the affected spouse will get more and more into depression, because they are not getting support, they are not getting treatment, because the healthy spouse will feel like, they're feeling anajifanya, so they are not supporting. Then the undepressed spouse will also withdraw also, and probably keep distance and keep busy, go maybe find connection somewhere else. So it really affects the marriage. And maybe on top of that, to talk about depression and feelings, it deprives feelings, you know, to the person who is depressed. And they feel empty. So even connecting with this spouse becomes very, very difficult. Connecting with their spouse who is healthy. So it is good to understand, for this spouse to understand the problem is with them, or the challenge is with them, because they may feel like maybe the spouse who is healthy is the problem. Especially for some men, they may feel maybe their wife is the problem, and they get to start living. Because there's that aspect of you want to escape. You want to escape and find a life, you know, life, get some intensity of life somewhere else, or get some fulfillment somewhere else. They'll go and maybe hang out with friends and feel better, or maybe get an affair somewhere that will make them feel better. But it is good to know living is not the in thing. Living is not the solution, because the problem is me as the depressed spouse. Okay, and this condition is called anhedonia, because it leaves you empty, deprived of feelings and all that. So it's good to realize you are the problem, the depressed person. Work on it, get out of that depression slowly, and then you can be able to connect with your spouse. The other effect is that it affects the family, because the children can be able to notice, maybe mommy is not the way she used to be. Daddy is not the way he used to be. He's not taking us out the way he used to do. Mommy is not able to cook the good food she used to cook for us. And so it will also cause depression to the children and concern. The healthy spouse may feel overwhelmed, because now that there is lack of motivation and energy to the depressed spouse, they will not be able to do their duties as much. And so you realize the other spouse may be left to do a lot. If it's taking the children to school, or preparing for them for school, or checking on the children, or even checking on the house chores to make sure they are okay, it really drains. So there are a lot of effects. The other issue is that you may realize your spouse is because of the lack of motivation, lack of energy, and maybe they are not getting the support now that someone says anajifanya, or they are pretending. Then they might lose their job. They get somewhere they have no energy to go to work, or to do probably some whatever they have been doing to bring some source of income. And so that brings financial conflicts or challenge in the family, and it will end to conflict. Yes, because the other spouse will say, now you see, you have refused even to go to work. Now we don't have our finances. We are suffering. And so they will get angry with the depressed spouse. So it is very important to know your spouse is not pretending. Depression is real. It is a real mental disorder. It is very serious condition, and it's detrimental, and it can lead to suicide very, very fast. Someone goes down very fast, and they feel hopeless. The feelings of hopelessness and frustration, they can really get to a point where they get affected and get into depression.
Yes, if you have just joined us, this is Couples Read Show, and this is where we write down our love. When we are alive, we don't want our love story to be told when we are going to speak to a couple out there.
Depression is real, very real, and a very serious mental disorder. They are irritable, more than before. Why they are angry more than before. So it is good to take note and ask yourself, would this be depression? Realize that depression really sucks a lot of energy from your spouse. There's hope. There's hope. There's treatment out there. You can take them to a psychiatrist to get some medication if it's very serious, and at the same time they can be able to go through therapy, and they will be able to get a stage where you're just maybe mildly affected, and there's a stage where you get deeply affected.
You need to make people understand that depression is just like any other.
So please, let's take note, let's be aware, let's be enlightened, and even share with other people. Thank you so much.
Now you have the knowledge to know how to handle your depressed spouse.